Hi guys, I'm DJ Blighty and welcome to DJ Blighty TV. Today's video is really not a lesson, so I don't want you to think I'm clickbaiting you in to watching this video by saying your first ever DJ lesson. It is a lesson in the sense that I'm going to be explaining all the equipment and what the equipment you own or are about to own actually does, because that information isn't really that easily available. So what we're going to be talking about today is what all of the controls, the buttons, the knobs, the sliders and everything on your equipment actually does, so you have a basic understanding of it before we get started on the mixing process. I will be running a full DJ course which will be from beginner, intermediate to advanced, which is going to be available very soon. I'm working on it at the moment, so keep an eye on future videos for all of the information that you need to access that. If you are a subscriber and you haven't already done so, please turn on that bell notification so you don't miss any future uploads. So yeah, today's video, we're going to go over to my controller. I'm going to talk you through all the basics. It may not be exactly the same one that you have, but it will give you a good explanation of what the basic controls are and what a DJ essentially does. If you have any questions, please hit me in the comments below and I will try my best to answer as soon as possible. Let's go. So yeah, just to confirm, today is not going to be a lesson on how to actually mix. This is literally just going to be a talk through of all the equipment and what this actually does and what we use it for. So it's really keeping things nice and simple for someone who has literally never seen or laid hands on one of these pieces of equipment before. This is a Pioneer DDJ 1000 SRT edition, which means it's only able to be used with Serato software. You can't use it with Rekordbox or Traktor or any other DJ software. It's limited to Serato, which is what I personally use, but that's something that we will go into in future lessons. Today, all this stuff that you see in front of you, I will explain what it is used for and what it does. And what you've got to understand is that you may not have this exact piece of equipment, but on most basic and even starter controllers, all of these things that we are going to go through now will be there, so you have an understanding of what they do. So as I explained in the intro, the use of this equipment is essentially for us to have the ability to play one track and mix or transition into another track. So essentially you have 4 channels. We're only going to be looking at 1 and 2 because some controllers or DJ equipment only actually has 2 channels. The 4-channel situation is something that is a little bit more advanced and will not be applicable at the moment, especially if you've never attempted to DJ before. So first things first, what we have in front of us is 2 separate playing decks. So what I want you to do is note that I've set channel 1, which I've just demonstrated here, to this side. So all of these controls are operated for this channel strip here, and channel 2 is all of this side and all of these buttons and controls that you see. I'm going to break each one down individually so you understand exactly what they are for. What you can see on the readout here is 126, which is relating to the BPM, which is the tempo of the track, how fast it plays. This right here is the pitch fader, which we actually use to adjust the tempo if we want to mix 2 tracks together. So what you'll see now, I've got this set at 8%. So if you watch these numbers as I move the slider, you'll see that by going down this way, I can go to -8%, which takes us to 116, back to 0, and I can go up to 136. You can see it went off by about 0.1 of a decimal, but that doesn't matter. So basically you can see the +8 readout here. We can adjust that using the Serato software, so it can go to 16 or even 50%, which gives us a much bigger range, which is great for mixing between different genres and tempos and making transitions. But As a rule of thumb, even with the technology we have today with things like key sync, which prevent tracks from sounding too sped up or slowed down, I always like to stay within approximately a 4 to 5% pitch range when mixing records, but that's something that I'll cover in future lessons. This is literally just to explain the fact that we use this slider to slow down and speed up tracks in order to make them the same time or tempo. All these lit up buttons, all these colourful buttons here, do serve a purpose. They're called hot cues, and what they do is allow us to set them at certain points in the track, which allow us to trigger them at the push of a button. So what I like to do is set them out so I know exactly what they are in a track, even if I don't know it. So the first one will always be the first beat or first bar of the track, so I know that's the very beginning of the record. The second one I'll always set at the point where the record actually starts or kicks in, so it's the vocal usually. The third one is the breakdown before the first drop. The fourth one is the first drop. Then following on from that, the second verse. Then following on from that, the second breakdown, second drop, and outro. This is actually a radio edit I've got here, so there's no intro beats if that was a little bit off-putting to you. But yeah, that's essentially what they're for. But I won't explain how we set them, it's just so you understand that's what all these buttons are for. Once you press one, let me just erase the first one here. All you have to do to engage it is press the button, and that is then stored in place. Next to the cue buttons, the hot cue buttons, we have the actual cue button, which you can set at any point in the track to trigger the cue point there. Play, once the cue is set, when you press play, it'll play from that point. If you want to find a different point on the pause, you can move it, and then when you press cue, that'll store that, so when you press play, it'll play from that cue point. But ordinarily, you'll want to set it at the very beginning, the point where you're going to play or mix the track. This control here is to adjust the jog dial. This won't be on more basic controllers, but you will find this on this controller and CDJs, which adjusts the tension of the jog wheel. So on light, it will go really far, really fast. On heavy, not so far. I like to set mine just around 11 o'clock because I do a lot of scratching, and that allows me to manipulate the record nicely without losing too much control of the tempo, but that's all down to personal preference. Up here in the top left, something that is on most even basic controllers is the beat loop, which activates loops. So if I was to press this now, it's automatically going to go to 4 beats. So when I press play, it's just going to repeat in increments of 4. And I can adjust that on my software to 8, 16, 32, or even 1, half a beat, quarter of a beat, 1/8 of a beat, a 16th of a beat, or as far as a 13th of a beat. So yeah, that is what that control up there is for. The next thing that we're going to look at is the actual mixer itself. We have headphone volume control, Q and master, which allows us to separate the sounds. These buttons here are what you can hear in the Q section of your headphones. So ordinarily, if you were mixing or preparing to play the track on the right hand side, you'd select the Q button. This would be all the way over to Q, your volume to whatever you're comfortable with in your headphones. And then when you press play on this song that's on the right hand side, you'll be able to hear that in the headphones. By turning this knob towards master, you'll be able to hear the track that's already playing, which will allow you to mix or get it in time before anyone else hears it when you bring the volume fader up. So the next thing to look at is the actual channel strip and what these controls do. These toggles at the bottom actually allow us to select the crossfader position, which is this here. And what this does is move us from the left playing deck to the right playing deck. If it's in the middle, it means both are playing at exactly the same volume. And depending on how you set the crossfader, on this controller we don't have a physical adjustment for it, it's all on the software. I have mine set to sharp because I do scratching, so it means as soon as this moves even a millimeter, this song is at full volume, but you can set it so it fades gradually. So when you pull this across, it increases the volume of this next song until you get to the middle, which is at its highest point in the mix. This and this is a volume controller, so at 0, completely no sound, and as you bring it up, it gradually increases the volume of the next track, and vice versa. So these are used for intricate mixing, so we'd usually start around the 7 mark, gradually bringing the volume up and down from the song you're mixing out of. These controls here are filter effects, sound color effects, sorry. So you've got a filter, high pass, low pass. We've got a noise, quite cool for like scratching type effects. So you can do stuff like this. Which is quite cool. You've got a dub echo. I like to use this a lot in my mixes. And you have a pitch effect, which I don't use much because I don't like it, but it can be quite cool if you play like EDM and stuff like that, trap music to play around with. The other controls we have above here are EQ controls. So you've got low, which is for your bass, mid, which is for your mid frequencies, and top, which is for your high frequencies, so all your percussion, your hi-hats and all those sort of things. We've got the ability to cut either out individually, which is great for mixing, but ordinarily I keep these all flat, which is basically what the song was recorded at naturally. So any adjustment minus takes it down, plus increases it. So I never like to see the bass over that point unless it's a really poorly mastered record. Yeah, so that is basically the basics of all the controls that you'll need. The right is exactly the same as everything I explained here, and yeah, all this is effects which you don't really need to worry about at the moment, but it's quite cool once you get into the swing of things to actually apply them. This selects the channel you want the effect applied to and allows you to select whichever effect. This is the amount of the effect, so let me just show you quickly what it does. That's an echo, so on half sounds like that, because we've got post fader effects on this mixer, which is cool. So when you pull the fader across and cut the sound off, it means the effect continues, which is really cool. But there's loads of effects. I don't need to go into detail because I'd be here all day, but yeah, it just means you've got really cool effects to play around with once you actually get to the grip of the basics. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for all the equipment talk through. That's everything you need to know if you've never seen any of this before. The next time that you see me, I will be going through your first ever DJ lesson. This is your first ever DJ kind of talk through your equipment and what it all does. The next one will be the very first DJ lesson, so we'll be talking about all the basics, how we actually start to play records, mix records, and go from there. If you've got any questions, please feel free to ask in the comments below and I will try my best to get back to you. I do have a full DJ course coming soon, so please keep your eye on future videos for links for that. And yeah, that's all we need to know for today.